Welcome to Building Better Businesses, an ABA podcast. Learn firsthand from business owners who built successful ABA businesses. Utilize proven techniques and strategies to help your practice thrive. This is Building Better Businesses, an ABA podcast with Jonathan Mueller.
Dillon refers to himself as a reformed management consultant. He's one of two managing partners at Icosian Capital and received his MBA from the University of Texas, Austin. Go Longhorns. He's a fellow boulderer, a kid corraller with two kids, and he loves reading anything he can get his hands on about successful business leaders and ancient mythology. Dillon, welcome to the pod.
Thanks, man. Happy to be here.
Hey, Dillon, what's cool about this? You are like the very first financial investor on this pod. So welcome. This is going to be like a super fun conversation, and I want to start it. Can you tell me like a little about your brother and what inspired you to get interested in autism services?
Yeah, so we're fortunate at Icosian to have the partners that we do and kind of given us the license and responsibility for figuring out where we wanted to spend our time in industries that we found interesting in order to ultimately acquire and partner with providers or business owners in taking their business forward, whatever shape that takes. For me personally, when given that kind of nebulous guidance, right, you can do whatever you want. What actually motivates you? And for me, thinking about it, I'm one of three children. I'm the oldest of three children. My little brother Chase is on the spectrum, and we had every resource available to us in the world. We were very fortunate. My parents were very engaged. They noticed that he wasn't hitting his milestones early. Got him into a special school. He went to another special school for middle school and then went to public high school, subsequently college, now doing very well at a company called RealPage, where he's a QA analyst. But he always had a beautiful, call it a focus and fixation on squishy animals, weird reptiles, being able to draw things that he could take a big pen and a piece of lined paper and turn it into something Picasso would draw. It was amazing, especially for somebody who's not artistically inclined at all like me. He later, when he got older, taught himself the drums and later the guitar, and he fell in love with the Melvins and kind of 70s era, 80s era punk rock, just loves it, right? And so I'll tell a story about him real quick where he kind of, everything sort of clicked into place for me. Is he has a band called Uncle Toasty, and Toasty has got a massive following here in DFW in the kind of the underground loud punk rock scene. It's not my kind of music, but that doesn't matter. And I went to go see him play, and they were opening up for a venue. It was their record release party. Everything's going on vinyl and doing the whole deal. And I was looking at my brother, who was always my weird little brother when we were kids, right? Had a fraught relationship, very, just different. You didn't have words or didn't have the empathy that, you do as an adult or can't have as an adult when you're a child, right? But I'm looking at my brother singing whatever it is he's singing, having a great time with a bunch of people, telling people like, hey, you need to, do this, do that, like really choreographing this 5-piece band that he's got. And there's a guy talking to my left about, had to bring Uncle Toasty and they were going to load this venue up. And I realized that like, because my brother is on the spectrum, because he's different, he has no social qualms about marketing this thing. This band that he cares about. My grandmother would get invites. My aunts, uncles, they're not going to come in from Chicago for this. He doesn't care. This is what he wants to talk about. And this is what he's really engaged in. And it's so infectious and so cool to watch somebody, because you just want that kind of passion. You think, man, this is a result. His confidence is he found his thing. And if I can help a child find their thing or help a sibling or a parent feel more comfortable about, kids having a kid that may be a little bit different for whom the world was not built, like what more noble cause can there be? What role can I play in this? And so that's sort of, how my brother got me from at least thinking about the autism services space.
What a powerful story. Is there something that Chase, or is there a way that Chase helped you look at the world differently, knowing he had a diagnosis?
So we didn't have, they used to call it Asperger's, but we found that out when he was like 16, 17. So it's sort of irrelevant. He was just always a little bit different. I think that the thing that he challenged me on was he would call me up out of the blue and have no reason to talk to me at all, but he had this thing that he wanted to tell me about. And that was his way of kind of engaging. And it's not that different than anybody else, any neurotypical person trying to make small talk. You have no idea what to say to people, like cocktail parties or whatever, right? But he was talking to me about a 60s actor of some kind that he'd just done. I was like, okay, well, send me the picture. And of course, I wish I had it, but like, it's one of these pen studies that he does where he can just take somebody's face and transpose it directly onto a piece of paper. And what an interesting, like, he just cares so much about this thing and does not care that I have no idea what that is. That's not the point. The point is this is what I like. And I want to share this with you. That's his way of kind of building connections and, inviting everybody to his band because he's psyched about it. He wants you to be psyched about it too and be really engaged. Like, so many people who have, do the MBA thing and, come out and, they do play everything right, don't really find their passion the way that he found his and really just double clicked into it. It was just nothing was going to get in his way from doing it. And he's also very fortunate again to, have been able to find a job that's paying him what he needs to live and got a little bit of wage. He's got a girlfriend that he loves very much. And he's just been able to build a life for himself. And while also really, really being a rock star, I'm his brother. And in so many, like in any rock club in the DFW area, Dallas Fort Worth area, I'm his brother for sure every time. And here I am having, gotten an MBA and done everything right. But I'm so jealous of my brother, the rock star. You know what I mean? Like that's what you want for, your kids. Anybody wants for their kids is to find that level of passion and to really double click into it and be able to make a living and make a go of it in the world. You know what I mean? So it made me see the world. I'm so jealous.
I've since I was in ninth grade, I also wanted to be a rock star. Unfortunately, that career came to a tumultuous stop in 10th grade.
Right.
So I learned some good hard lessons, but he clearly he got there, and that idea of like his way of empathy and creating connection was reaching out because he was so excited to share, that 60s icon with you or whatever it was.
Whatever it is.
That's cool, man. That's really cool.
Yeah.
It's fun. And by the way, like you are the first. So for everyone listening, we've got a YouTube channel, so go check it out. But Dillon is the first person who has actually written hi to his kids on a whiteboard behind it. Dillon, do you want to just give a shout out to your kids because that's cool?
Hi, Laney. Hi, Walker. Hi, also, Mommy. You're doing the Lord's work, Mom.
Lady and Walker and Mommy. Thank you for listening as well. And Dillon, I want to get back to basics and think about, there's a lot of different types of investing or investors out there that are interested in autism services. But what's a little unique and different about Icosian Capital is you all are a search fund. So tell me, what's a search fund and how is that different from other financial investors?
And so I think, my mentors at Deloitte M&A may wring my neck for this, but the way I think about investors or acquirers, potential partners, right? It falls into three buckets. There's the strategic acquirer, which is really company in the same field or a similar field that's eating another one, right? Or blending with another one, or in some weird cases, a small one buying a big one. These things happen. Financial buyer is predominantly looking for, that platform, that first step into which they can build a presence in a space, for example, in autism, right? Ours fits in sort of a third bucket where it's sort of a financial investor, but we're really looking for that owner operator sort of partnership. I should say also in financial partnerships, you also have majority partners and minority partners. Some people want to take the majority of whatever business practice, what have you, that they acquire a controlling interest and then deploy whatever management best practices or a management team or something like that into the business. Then there are minority partners who may just want a piece. You may just need a little bit of capital in order to get that next step of growth or stage of growth, whatever it is. Those are minority investors, minority partners. We put ourselves into a bit of a different category over here in the owner operator bucket. And the reason that I differentiate is because where financial partners maybe show up for the quarterly board meeting, maybe help set tone in a chairman style role, something like that, maybe take a management presence. Our objective is less to be an investor and more to be an operator. We view ourselves from more from the entrepreneurial angle, right?
Mm.
And by that I mean that at Icosian Capital, we're looking to partner with a provider team in providing care for its clients. That does not mean that we're going to sit here in quarterly board meetings and rest. No, we want to help work with somebody to help set their human capital strategy and make sure that their hiring plan is actually
Mm.
codified, their staff training manual is actually codified, making sure that somebody else is dealing with the rev cycle so that the providers can deal with the providing of care or the provision of care. Sort of dealing with what those. I've watched a lot of providers look at business things like and let their accountant handle it. Those are the sorts of matters that we really want. That's what we're trained to take on, right?
Mm.
And these are the things that we actually care about and really like is this idea of being present day to day, playing a part in the culture, playing a part in the team, having our sleeves up, and being in it with the care providing team to deliver it day in and day out, be a part of the community and be good. And that is I'm purely talking from the perspective of just like, this is why we think we're a little bit different than your other financial investors or your strategic acquirers. Different models, and there is no wrong model. There's only a wrong model for you if you're considering a partnership or an acquisition, whatever it looks like.
Yeah, I appreciate you clarifying those differences because it very much feels like a different model. And to your point, like it's not, you all are yes, you're going to bring capital to the table, but you all are not investors as much as you are owners operators. And I'm fond of saying as an entrepreneur, dude, it's like our necks on the line. Like you're sitting there at the guillotine and you're waiting for like the thing to drop, and that everything comes back to you and onto you. And that is just the nature of that owner operator role is very different from the nature of an investor role. So that's what that's what it feels like I can relate to for a search fund and what you're doing. But tell me, what does wild success at Icosian Capital look like to you?
Tommy and I, my partner Tommy Sheldon and I have been friends for 9 years. We met in week -1 of business school, and he and I spent, when we first started talking about doing this, before we went off and raised money or did anything, we said, okay, we're friends right now, but how do we interact as human beings and how does this work? So we spent about 6 months codifying values, principles, workplace habits, dispute resolution strategy, like all of these things into a 14-page document called a partnership charter. And for anybody considering a partnership, I highly recommend the book. It'll walk you through kind of just steps to take and what have you. No affiliate link here. I get no referral bonuses. It's just it's reference to my father-in-law put on my desk when I was talking to him about this, and we actually talked at great length about like what success looked for us. And I think that there were a couple of things where we really aligned. Tommy is the son of a police officer, and his mother was also came from law enforcement, and so he always felt this obligation to operate in service to the country and kind of has a higher calling relative to serve society. And I echo that. I mirror that. My family has some public service background. My family has a bit of a background in public service as well. And so if we can find in Icosian Capital a practice or a business where we are doing good for society, helping push the envelope for a given population, making a difference, that's kind of thing one that he and I aligned on really early in that partnership charter document. I think number two is, I'll say at the acquisition phase, when we acquire or partner with a provider team, we want that word partner is thrown around a lot of the time, but we want to make sure that people understand that we actually want to be a good partner to you. And we want to make sure that while we're trying to figure out which way is up relative to related to your practice, what have you, your operation, that there's some measure of good faith assumption on the part of both parties, that we both feel good about each other. And so finding that partner that shares the values that Tommy and I have codified, that kind of can echo them, and then also can make us feel comfortable. We make them feel comfortable that this is going to be a really good experience. Because it's stressful. Like acquisitions are stressful. The process of selling your baby, very stressful, right? And The next thing is, once we're operators, being in a business where we, or being in a situation, should say, where we can help elevate people. One of the things that I learned when I was working for a company called Sonder in past life, and at Deloitte, frankly, again, both past lives, was the importance of elevating the people around you.
Mm.
And Tommy and I spend a lot of time with the folks that work with us to try to make an impact. And so when we acquire or when we partner, we really want to, for those, BTs, RBTs, whomever our frontline folks are, to feel like they have the opportunity to elevate an organization and to really make a career out of ABA. I think that there's a longer. This is part of a longer conversation that we can have, but we want to help elevate whatever profession, whatever industry that we're in. We want people to feel like they have careers and places in it. That's important for us. Whether they stay with us at Sonder, I used to get really frustrated with the employees that would leave me for another dollar because I could try to help with that. I wanted them to leave me for salaries because the folks that I was hiring were frontline folks that may or may not have, had any direction before we talked about setting goals of these things. I loved hearing when one of my folks left me or left Sonder for a salary position or transitioned internally to a salaried position. That's the kind of forward momentum that I want to be able to provide as an owner. And then the final thing is I want to be able to have something in my life that I can look back and point at and say, I was a part of that. That's what I was a part of. And to challenge my children, to challenge those around me to take risks and to feel comfortable and confident and to proceed unafraid because they know that their dad, their friend, their brother, whomever it is, their son, whomever it is, took a shot and did well. Those are really big. And I'm speaking in the context of and I shouldn't. These are actually things that Tommy and I talk a lot about and kind of share when we were setting up Icosian.
Wow. So there's this Robert Ingersoll quote that we rise by lifting others, which I think speaks exactly to what you mentioned. And Dillon, the that notion of a partnership charter, which by the way, I'll drop in the show notes. That is powerful that y'all took 6 months and were that intentional about aligning on values and what you're hoping to accomplish and the impact that you want to have. And I have a co-CEO and a business partner, and he was actually on the show a little while back. And you can't spend enough time doing that stuff. So that's powerful. And it's just, I think it's a more fun experience as an entrepreneur, having someone with complementary skills and someone that's just going through the journey with you.
Well, and for me, it's critical. I'm sure that I annoy him all the time, but for somebody that just I need somebody to help bounce things off of and to provide that kind of, that's who I am as a human being. And so I'm sure that Tommy tolerates that, but
invaluable.
Yeah,
invaluable
100%.
Well, you've spent months now just getting to know the autism services field. What have you learned?
Yeah, I've learned a lot, I think, and still know very little, of course. But I've had the good fortune to talk to a bunch of providers. I've been able to attend certain conferences, Autism Investor Summit, Tech Saba. I'm slated to go to ABAI in May. And I took an RBT course and still plodding along through that. And I think there are a couple of things that stuck out to me. The first is that the RBT BT position, you need to have some kind of credentialing. You need to have some kind of test, some kind of something to step into in order to make sure that somebody's had a hurdle to jump over, right? I can appreciate and respect the need for that. But at least the training that I went through, and I went on the BACB website and found one that would at least have a reasonable likelihood of helping somebody like me pass, and I took one, and the content is immense. This 40-hour thing, it feels, again, speaking in full transparency here and holding, there's a no mercy, no malice kind of attitude to this comment, but it doesn't feel like they're being set up for a lot of success from just having taken that course. there's like it's almost like a driver safety class, not even like the driver's ed component, because there's a practicum component of driver's ed where you expect people to actually drive.
Yep.
And the minute that you're faced, I could tell you that even somebody who's pretty good at taking tests, and I've sat through that content, and it's if I'm ever put in front of, or when I'm put in front of a autistic child, or somebody on the spectrum, somebody from the neurodiverse community, I'm not going to remember anything from that exam. It's not, it doesn't seem to be setting people up for success. So there needs to be something. I think that it's a step in the right direction to have what's there. I look forward to seeing how this thing evolves as the profession matures. Right. The other thing that I notice is that so many providers, this will be a theme that I hit a couple of times, but so many providers will trust their accountant for finance because they're not a business person, or they don't want to think about the business aspect of what they're providing, either because they feel guilty, because they're charging, money for, their time, or, they just don't feel comfortable with it. And I cannot tell you how many providers I've talked to where, you start peeling into their books and, the accountant made a mistake here or whatever it was. And they don't feel comfortable taking that level of ownership because they're not a business person. And the challenge I would have to that provider is you may be a care provider, but in order to continue providing care, you need to know your numbers. You need to know what the dollars and cents of your business are. And it does not do it does not do service to anybody to just put that responsibility over there, because they are not ultimately accountable for the performance of their practice. You are, as a manager. So I just have to beat the drum, and of course, right, to a hammer, everything's a nail. And I'm an MBA, so this is what I think about, But like taking some ownership. Most providers, or the providers that I've spoken to, especially in smaller practices, who may be uncomfortable with their level of financial literacy or how it relates to their P&L, should really invest some time, or would do well to invest some time there, because they're doing great work, important work for an important base of clients that needs them there, and you owe it to them to continue being able to show up. The only way you do that is by knowing how much or how little, or what things look like from a income, rev cycle, et cetera, front. So those are the two things. I've also, the third thing I'll just point out is no part of this is easy, and there is never enough time in the day to do all of the things that are being asked of care providers. And the front line, the BT, the RBT, BCBA, clinical directors, it's heroes work, and not for the faint of heart.
It's absolutely heroes work. And that what you point out about the RBT, like this is a journey at 4.5 years of Ascend. Is initially it was we would hire BTs and then say, here you go, 40 hours, good luck. We realized that's setting no one up for that's minimum book knowledge, right? Not the practical hand-on knowledge. And I appreciate you've got to demonstrate skills and check those off. Yet I get it. Again, that's like minimum practical knowledge. And what we learned is we had to keep layering on. How you would think of like a traditional way of learning, a traditional course, right? That means you're checking in with someone. Right? Yeah. But you've got to like check in with someone who knows more, and who is like, and you're then putting those concepts to work. And we've had to like expand out the amount of time that we spend to make sure people feel set up for success. I think that's an important tact. But you mentioned the Autism Investor Summit, which happened back in April. What was the deepest insight you took away from that?
So it was really interesting to get the different takes, and you and I had a quick conversation on this in a little while back, but on value-based care and kind of where we are as it relates to ABA. There was a number of panels on this. One of the most interesting for me was listening to the payers talk about the different hierarchies and field questions, because there's so much desire for this from everybody's perspective, to be able to deliver care to the neurodiverse community in a way that demonstrates consistent outcomes. But there's so many questions and so much tension from the provider front, because there's so many variables, and only recently have CPT or code's been consolidated to the point that they have, and now because of there was talk, this is just side conversation, but because of all the nuances associated with value-based care, you have the potential to blow that back out and make it all the more confusing when we just tried to go through this simplification exercise. And just kind of that tension between how do we make sure that that people are getting care, full stop, for starters, and the right kind of care for who they are, and how do we make sure that the providers can continue to afford to provide that care and the payers can continue to afford to pay the providers, and kind of just the tension that is at odds across the healthcare system, right? And it was interesting to hear on one end, value-based care is right around the corner. You talk to somebody else, it's bleeding edge way out there, and but I think the consistent takeaway for me, having heard all of this and again coming at it as a comparative neophyte, is that there is need for direction from the provider, right? The providers need to be providing that direction, because this is something that you can't afford. It's going to be very hard to undo, rewind, unwind, whatever comes next. And sure, you can iterate on it, but you need to be close to good enough in order to kind of spin through it. And just, one more thing for everybody to think about in their abundant free time in the ABA community. Again, heroes work, and that's completely sarcastic. That abundant free time is completely sarcastic.
Totally. You pointed out earlier, this is a hard field to be in. This is a hard, it's hard to provide those highest quality services and make sure you've got the right, as you point out, like you're lifting up your team and that you're staying compliant, like all of these things that go into it, and adding on value-based care adds another level of complexity. Frankly, I'm a huge proponent, because we need, more broadly in our healthcare system, but certainly in autism services, we've got to better align incentives, right? Because when your incentive is to bill hours, what are you going to do? You're going to bill more hours.
That's right.
So
you get what's reinforced.
Tenet
one of ABA.
Spoken like a true aspiring RBT. I love it.
Right.
But yeah, but the path to getting there, I think you're right. Like it's really important that providers have to be a strong part of that conversation. Payers will say the same thing, and that we have willing partners in the payers to carry that.
100%. And I think that it was interesting to hear the different puts and takes, and the payers standing out there, and the providers asking questions and trying to give answers to. It's a really complex and difficult topic. It's a Rubik's Cube we got to figure out.
A Rubik's Cube. I like it. ABA practice owners, are billing and insurance issues getting you down? Well, let me tell you, Element RCM is your answer. Element provides world-class revenue cycle management services, contracting, credentialing, authorizations, billing, and more. Element's your partner, so you can focus on what you love to do, providing the highest quality services to your families and clients. Element's a preferred partner of the Behavioral Health Center of Excellence, and its founders have nearly 20 years of experience owning and operating successful ABA organizations. They understand you. They know that every dollar counts, that integrity is everything. Element works with any practice management system, and Element's not a vendor, they're your partner. So find out more and take a free revenue cycle assessment at elementrcm.ai. So, as an investor, like what are some of the green flags that you're looking for in an autism services organization that would get you excited to acquire them? And conversely, what are some red flags?
Yeah. I think these green flags and red flags are often two halves of the same coin. So I'm going to talk in the context of green flags. There are really sort of two buckets. There's the qualitative and the quantitative. On the qualitative front, from an acquisition, like an outright buy, which is again what we're looking to do with some nuance there about making sure that people have equity and ongoing basis and whatnot. But we want somebody who's excited to partner, who wants to work with somebody who is excited to take that next step of growth. It's scary, and you don't know what it's going to look like, but for all of those reasons, may be excited to work with us or whomever the partner may be to take it to the next level, because they think that they've got the right playbook, right? And we agree that they've got the right playbook. So I think that there's an alignment of excitement there. The second thing that I'll point out is I've alluded to it earlier. Excuse me. You got to have compatible values. Partnership is built on that value set, that culture set, and if and in so many businesses, not just in the ABA field, but everywhere, the business or practice is a reflection of the owner, right?
Mhm.
And for good reason. They hire the people, they make sure that they set the tone. And if that is set in unintentionally, I would say, without intention, um, you run the risk of it getting away from you
Mm.
and not mirroring what you would like for it to mirror. Um, there's sort of a walk the walk thing that Tommy and I like to think a lot about. Like, are you paying lip service to your values the way that, Enron is the one that everybody hangs up as having a 140-page code of ethics, and we know how that story ended abruptly in a ball of flame,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, or are you somebody who's paying lip service to it, or are you actually walking
Mm.
walking your talk? So making sure that the values are aligned. And again, so many people just have different values, but are doing good work. That's great. It's just not going to be the right partnership for
Mm.
Tommy and me, or whomever. Right for somebody else, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that's a green flag. It's just having some compatibility across our value
Mm.
set. Um, the second, and this is where I get cold and analytical, is having an understanding of what your numbers are and why they are what they are. Not trying to throw mud over them or dust over them or whatever. Just confronting honestly, like, hey, my collections period looks like this, my cancellations rate looks like that. Just having an idea, some rough idea about KPIs, um, and why they look like what they look like, even if it's the first time
Mm.
you thought about it. Um, that helps us get a little bit more confidence in how engaged you are in the business,
Mm.
um, versus not realizing that you have some kind of skeleton or some kind of time bomb with a pair
Mm.
that you didn't know existed, and we would have known existed. We'd have to get diligence and all these things. Um, the other thing that I'll say is, who they want to serve, right? So a lot of smaller providers um, will take anybody who comes through their door, and that's a beautiful thing. And it's you need to you need those folks. You need the folks who are
Mm.
going to take everybody, because not everybody can do early intervention, right?
Mhm.
Not everybody can work with 2, 3 year olds. Um, but having an understanding about who you think you are best set up to serve and why, because that can affect your hiring plan and a whole bunch of other things, like as well as your culture, right? Um, I've talked to severe folks who work with severe case autism, very different kind of clinical presence that needs to be there, very different field presence, very different insurance requirements. There's a whole bunch of cold analytical things and a whole bunch of warm, fuzzy qualitative things that change materially, um, depending on who you're serving, what your clients look like. Um, and even if you don't have an idea, just being frank about that and upfront about it, that's a green flag for us. It's just open, honest
Mm.
communication is kind of what it comes down to. And then we'll feel each other out over the course of that engagement. If you're excited to partner to us, we're excited to get to an answer. Whether it's yes or no, we're going to part friends or we're going to become best friends. That's kind of
Mm.
the attitude that we have. The red flags would be the converse of that, right? You have no idea what's going on. You have no idea who you're serving, how you're serving, how to even get the information out of your practice management software or your
Mm.
QuickBooks, or my accountant is the one that handles all of that. It'll be the first time I've talked to them since last April or whatever it is. These are
Mm.
these are red flags, not necessarily deal breakers for the record. They're just things that it's like, okay, I need to make sure that we're going to need to do some extra deep digging to make sure there's not other problems here. Um,
Mhm.
so, because I mean, again, we are stepping into it. Tommy and I, I've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and turning 5 this year. She never
Mm.
hesitates to remind me of that. Tommy's got a 9-month-old. Part of this owner operator thing is that we move to HQ and take our families, our dogs, our wives, our lives,
Mm.
and out to HQ to play this role, an on-site role in whatever whoever we partner with. And if we find out that there's a stick of dynamite hiding in the closet, like, there are a lot of lives that are attached to that, on top of the people, on top of the practice, on top of the employees, on top of
Mm.
the clients, that we may no longer be the right people to help
Mm.
carry that forward, right? Um, so that's how we think about it. There's sort of a number. There's 1.5 million. So you show you a
Mm.
diligence list that would scare you, but um, there's a million and a half other questions that come as a result of those things, but those are kind of the four green flags, yellow flags, red flags that come up.
This is like a fundamental premise of like this podcast of building a better business in ABA, whether or not as a provider of any size you're thinking about selling. Build your business as a great, build your practice as a great practice, your business as a great business, and be doing those things you talk about, like having KPIs and having an understanding of where you want to go and an understanding of, whom you are best equipped to serve and how your services actually do that. That's just part of having a great organization, right? I think that's powerful. And it's, the other thing, unlike other investors, what I just heard you describe, is once you acquire a business, you're actually moving your family, you are all in and you're going there. You're not sitting in your ivory tower in Dallas or New York or wherever.
Yeah.
You're in it. And that's really cool, man.
Yeah. When we talk to people about it, it's like, how did you get your wives to sign up for this? Well, I don't know. They're very supportive and very patient. I don't know.
That's powerful. Kudos to them. Right.
Amen.
Well, in a prior life, Dillon, you worked at Sonder, which, as I understand it, was a $1.3 billion startup, and it's like an Airbnb, but for sort of more creative, higher end, rental spaces. What did you learn about customer experience at Sonder?
Yeah. So my job at Sonder, I went from M&A consulting to needing to figure out if I like to manage people, and so I went off, took a job as an operations manager at Sonder, where I had a team of 2 and 8 doors, like you say. It's 2, imagine hotel rooms, or 8 hotel rooms doors. We grew that to about 15 direct reports from me, a team of 20 on the Austin team, but 15 reported to me, and about 300 doors pre-COVID. But COVID shrink our portfolio a little bit, but so our job was everything responsible for delivering the guest experience, working with the housekeepers, the laundry folks, every vendor, every inventory, making sure everything is stocked, just so we were turning your rooms, all of that. That was all us. And I think that the biggest and most relevant thing that you learn is that people think in peaks, right? There's a whole lot of noise over the course of your day, such that you don't remember when, your partner, your spouse, whomever, your dog looks at you and asks you what your day looked like, right? But you do remember peaks. You remember positive peaks, and you remember negative peaks or valleys, depending on who you're talking to. And so our job at Sonder was, as an operations team, was to create those positive peaks for people and to make sure that, their entry experience, which is the first time entering that unit, they knew the lights were on. There was a picture of their, the Sonder branded imagery was on the TV, the Chromecast, and that wasn't on all day. It just got turned on for, make sure we were conserving energy. That we were sending exactly the right image, that this stay was going to be everything that somebody wanted going into it. That was my obligation to know, and that was my team's mission, right? To deliver day in, day out, every day. And then when there were problems, AC bonked because, some of these things are 30 years old. AC goes out. How do you recover such that negative peak becomes a positive peak because of how well and beautifully you recovered? And I think applying that to, client service, or applying that to ABA, you're going to have great days. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have variability with your clients. Some days they're going to be, everything's click and clack, and you reinforce your work, and everything's, the plan is, you're running the plan is getting run. There are going to be days where that thing is out the window and you have no idea how you're going to recover. There's, tantrums are going on, and you just got a real problem on your hands. And maybe a couple of them, maybe a couple of days are, real negative peaks. How you recover is important to how that client will remember you, or that client's family will remember you. They will associate you more if you recover beautifully, and I would call it dignified, but that's just because I don't have the right word for it. But if you can, maintain your composure and show empathy for what they are going through as well, and do everything that you can to make sure that it's not that this doesn't become a permanent negative. You don't let the negative stop there. I think that that's powerful. And then you have the departure, and like how you leave somebody is also how they tend to remember you. Like people, again,
Mhm.
it's when they meet you, when you leave, and then everything in the middle is just, you know, varying sinusoidal waves, um, peaks and valleys. So how you manage
Mm.
those negative peaks and really capitalize on those positive peaks, um, I think was really drilled into me at Sonder. The other thing I'll say is like customer experience, client experience, whatever it is, it's all predicated on how you treat your team.
Mm.
Um, if my team was getting run into the ground, it was really hard for them to put a smile on their face day in and day out for those customers, right? Those guests. Um, some were better than others. Sometimes you had bad days. Sometimes you had good days. These are human beings. And hospitality is a brutal field.
Mhm.
For if you anybody who's ever worked in the hospitality or the hotel business, it is not for the faint of heart either. Um, but um, if you treated your team well and you demonstrated you were in it with them and you were
Mm.
putting in the effort and you again walked that talk, um, you could get more out of them and they would be more excited to give you that, and everybody would feel a little bit better. And that's not to say
Mm.
you're taking advantage of them. It's actually that like they're excited to engage with you. Because Lord knows, like I remember one Easter, I was up in Fort Worth and our operation was in Austin. I got a call Easter from one of my leads. It's like, hey, wheels have come off the wagon.
Mm.
Housekeepers didn't show. We can't turn these rooms. And we were like, okay, well, I'll be there in 3 hours. Like, Laney, again, God bless my wife and kids.
Wow.
Get in the car. We got to go. Because we had to deliver for the guests. They were the ones that we had to create, make sure that that entry experience is everything we wanted, and that stay experience is everything we wanted for them, and we owed to them. And I owed it to my team to be present, even if it meant that the Easter egg hunt had to get cut short. Nobody likes that, but
Mm.
it's the nature of having ownership over what you do.
Yeah, at the bend over backwards, dude. You're speaking my language. Back in May, this is one of the things I'm most passionate about. But in May, I did a CEU event with Behavior Live, and talked about this exact thing. What you describe is, I think psychologists refer to it as the peak end rule, right? We remember our experiences based on the peak, which can either be a high or a low, and the end, or for longer experience, sort of the transitions in
Mm-hmm.
between. And so I think a lot of people and a lot of practice owners might think, okay, look at all the little potholes and I'm just going to fill potholes, or just, no, you don't smooth stuff out. No, you focus on, I mean, if you have a deep Mario pothole, then yes,
Yeah,
fix it. Otherwise,
yeah,
go create elevated experience. It's so true. And by the way, what you said about like, you got to get it right for your team members first. Like
yeah.
100%. If you can't do that, then you can't purport to have great customer experience. But like, how does this apply in your mind to the ABA field?
Yeah, so applying it again, I kind of alluded to it a little bit, but you know, you're going to have great client days, you can have bad client days, you're going to have good days, and you got to remember why you're doing it,
Mm.
for the front line. And as a manager of people, like again, I find myself in a disadvantaged position because I can go clean a hotel room. I'm I don't have my RBT credential yet. I can't administer interventions, and I think, or I actually know that you can't do it if you actually own the practice. You can't be the
Mm.
RBT that's doing the deal. But no matter, as a manager of people, you've got to make sure that you're creating an environment such that people feel good about what they do, that they can be vulnerable because they're going to have bad
Mhm.
days, that they don't always have to keep a stiff upper lip, but that they understand that as much as possible, um, making sure that the client feels good about who's helping them and who's providing that care,
Mm.
and the client's family feels good insofar as they're able, you're all in this together: management, frontline, client family, client stakeholder, caregiver support, whomever, and making sure that they feel good and feel a part of that team. Your team feels a part
Mm.
of that team versus a lone single shingle operator that doesn't know why they're showing up day in and day out. um, it's critical, man. And as my team grew, I didn't have to do as much, and I didn't have to go paint houses or whatever it was that I was doing. Um, but I still took the trash out, and that's not my idea. That came from a book called Team of Teams.
Mm.
Um, but you gotta have your sleeves up to
Mhm.
demonstrate that you're in it with your with your team. And I think that in the ABA field, most providers that I've spoken to understand this intuitively. They understand that they are in it for the client. What I've observed that they forget about is that RBT is an extension of them and should be treated as such. It's not just a human. It's not just a tool. It's a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's a larger coverage of the larger workforce, the Great Resignation commentary in there too. But just making sure that you're responsible for setting the tone for your team. And you're responsible for setting the tone for your clients. And if you want for that to be positive, you got to be showing up and trying to meet them where they are, meeting the clients where they are, and a million miles of empathy in every direction.
A million miles of empathy. Well said. Yeah. Dillon, throw one question at me, anything, and make me answer on the spot.
Man, what do you think is the biggest differentiator between, somebody who is in this profession for life versus, somebody who's in it for a day? What do you think makes that lifer versus makes that one-off? I tried this and, got scared off by it.
I think there's one question that I would ask to determine that. That would be, what does wild success look like to you in life?
Mm-hmm.
And if I heard someone describe like the wild success in a context of building a great practice, and that like this deep commitment to their work and the profession of ABA, versus if wild success was something else, that's not, and there's no right or wrong answer to that question. It's just the ultimate motive. If that ultimate motive is because I want to do something else and the profession is in service to that, okay, that's fine, but that's not a lifer. So that's the question I would ask.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, Dillon, where can people find you and Icosian online?
So I did a social media purge, which was a mistake, is what I'm finding. But I'm on LinkedIn. My partner and I are both on LinkedIn. But you can find us on our website, icosiancapital.com. Learn a little bit about who we are, our bios, backgrounds, our partners, where our money comes from. Often the big question. And then tracking and trailing people like Jonathan Mueller here, trying to make sure that I can keep up with all the content that's getting generated. The space is changing by the minute.
By the minute is right. You know what, dude? Power to you for getting off social media. I think, and to be fair, there's some social media out there that does it for good. But that takes gumption. You're going to be okay in the future when there's like a Terminator world. I feel like not being on social media, you're going to have like the leg up, and you're not going to get tracked down by Arnold.
I'm still on LinkedIn, so like let's not over evangelize. But I've managed to avoid Instagram and TikTok and some of the others. But to my detriment, there's so much content out there that I could be consuming if I were on these things, I suppose. But then I'd end up watching silly dog videos or something, I'm sure.
Right, and getting the 3-second attention span.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't need any more of that.
All right, Dillon, you ready for the hot take questions? These are rapid fire, quick answer.
All right, let's do it.
All right, so you're on your deathbed. What's one thing you want to be remembered for?
I want to be a great father.
Amen. What's your most important self-care practice?
I get enough sleep, man. If you don't get sleep, I don't know how these people function, like these 3-hour people that wake up at 4 in the morning after they go to bed. I had an employee that slept for 2 hours a night, and he was great. He was fantastic, but like he also taught himself Japanese and Russian. I can't say that I'd be that productive. I'd end up on Instagram with the dog videos.
Yeah,
but like just an animal. But yes, I gotta get my 8 hours, or I'm useless.
Yes. Favorite song?
I have two. My daughter, Hey Hey What Can I Do by Led Zeppelin is not thought of as a lullaby conventionally, but she was screaming top of her lungs one day. And Led Zeppelin came on, and that girl stopped listening, just like it was the most meditative thing in the world. And so since then, she and I have had a thing for Led Zeppelin. We listen to it for a good time together. my son and I listen to Father and Son by Cat Stevens. It's one of the few songs he knows to request on Spotify, but he listens to it every night whenever I put him down. And it's those are my two favorite songs. I get to spend a lot of time. I love my kids. My wife also is an important part of my life. I should also say that our first dance was Kiss by Prince. But
iconic. Yeah. It's not time to make a change.
You
just
get it.
Relax, take it easy. I won't subject you nor my listeners to the rest of that, but I could sing that entire song in a different era of my life. That was like the only song. So rock on, dude.
Yeah.
All right. So if you could give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, Dillon, what would it be?
My wife and I met when we were 17. We started dating when we were 17. So don't lose your wife. Don't lose your girlfriend. Marry that girl. Do wonders for you. I think it's slow down. At 18, you're moving so fast, you don't know what you're doing, and you don't know which direction you're going. You just like next. You're doing it all for the experience. And I wish that I had spent more time figuring out what I actually care about. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like sounds like it's supposed to be deeper than it is, but it really, like, I think that I looked up one day when I was in my mid-20s, realized I had no hobbies, which is why I started bouldering. So I was like, I need to figure out, maybe a multi-dimensional person here. You can't just be work and nothing else.
There's so many things that are cool about that. And yes, like at 18, like we feel like we know the world and we know everything there is and like we've made it right.
Yeah.
And by the way, the best bouldering in the world is what, like 8 hours from you in Waco Tanks out by El Paso. So
it's a ways. I need to get out there. I only ever bouldered inside, which makes me a total poser, and I realize that. But it's mandated for my wife that I try to avoid as much as I can. Anyway.
Hey, keep your core strong, and your back will thank you for it as you get older. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can only wear one style of footwear. What would it be?
Flip-flops. My partner's a cowboy boots guy. I'm a flip-flops guy.
I love it. That just fits. And Dillon, this has been awesome, man. What a fun conversation. I really appreciate you coming on the pod.
Jonathan, it was my pleasure, man. I hope somebody gets something out of it. And I love what y'all are doing. It's been such a fun thing to be a passenger on the ride here.
Awesome. Best of luck, Dillon.
Take care, Jonathan.
Thanks for listening to Building Better Businesses in ABA podcast. Stay tuned for our next exciting episode. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. We value your feedback. Don't forget to follow us on social media at elementrcm.ai.